The rage that bloomed in Evangeline's chest was not hot, it was glacial. A cold, precise, architectural fury, the kind that does not shout, does not tremble, does not make mistakes. It was born of a lifetime of being underestimated, a few brutal weeks of being hunted, and one long, agonizing trial of being bled and broken for the entertainment of creatures who had already decided she was nothing. They had demanded a test of strength, and she had given it to them, paid for it, in blood and cracked ribs, and a mind that would carry the scars of 900 borrowed years for the rest of her life. And it was not enough. They still saw a puppet, a trick, a mortal playing dress-up in a dead god's jewelry. She looked at Valerian, still on his feet, face twisted in righteous contempt, and a single cold thought crystallized behind her eyes. You want to see power? You want to know what a shard of Umbra can do when it is not chained to your withered, centuries-old bloodline? Fine. She did not answer their accusations. Words were their game, a game of precedent and loopholes and laws written by the powerful to protect the powerful. She would never win that game. So, she chose a different one. She looked directly at Patriarch Valerian, the ancient, terrible Lord of Shadow, and decided to show him what darkness actually looked like. She lifted one hand, fingers slightly curled. She did not speak, did not chant, did not channel through any ritual or sigil or ancient glyph. She just pulled. It started small. Her shadow, her own body cast on the polished floor, ceased to be an absence of light and became something tangible, something alive. It flowed up her legs like liquid night, cool and soothing against her burning skin. Then she pulled harder. The shadow beneath Valerian's obsidian throne, a patch of darkness that had lain undisturbed for 500 years, peeled itself from the floor and began to flow toward her. Valerian felt its loss, a sudden, inexplicable chill, a nakedness he had never experienced. His tirade died in his throat. Then the shadow from Ravenna's throne of bone. Then the darkness pooling in the far corners of the vast chamber, the deep gloom of the vaulted ceiling, the shadows that gave the stone carvings their depth and menace. All of it began to move, not a chaotic rush, a great, silent, inexorable tide. Rivers of pure black flowed across the polished floor, converging on the small, bleeding figure in the center of the room. The central brazier was still roaring, 20 feet of flame and fury. Evangeline looked at it. She reached out with her will, and she took its shadow too. The fire did not go out. It was consumed. The darkness rose up like a wave and swallowed the flame whole. Light, heat, sound devoured into a perfect, silent void. The torches on the walls went next, their light eaten one by one. The cold blue-gray glow from the unseen windows above was snuffed out like a row of candles in a hurricane. She looked at Ravenna, perfect, porcelain Ravenna, who wanted to put her on a slab and take her apart piece by piece, and she reached out and took the shadow from the hollow of her throat. She took the darkness that lined her perfect violet eyes. She took the sliver of night that clung to a single strand of her silver hair. Ravenna felt it go, a violation more intimate than any touch, and a small, choked gasp escaped her lips, the first undignified sound she had made in 1,000 years. The world dissolved. For 3 heartbeats, 3 silent, eternal, bottomless heartbeats, the most powerful predators on the planet were plunged into an absolute, suffocating blackness. Not an absence of light. Evangeline had not turned off the sun. She had stolen the concept of shadow. Their supernatural senses, their shadow sight, the ancient vampire gift that let them see in any darkness. Useless. There were no shadows to see by. There was nothing to see. They were blind. They were helpless. They were mortals in the dark. And they could feel her, the one creature in the room who could see, the one who held all the darkness in the world in the palm of her bleeding hand. For the first time in centuries, for some of them a millennium, they remembered what it felt like to be prey. The primal, helpless terror of not knowing what is in the dark with you. 1 heartbeat. The silence was absolute. 2. The terror was a weight on their ancient chests. 3. The universe held its breath. Then, as calmly as she had taken it, she gave it back. The lights returned in a violent, silent detonation. The brazier roared to life. The torches flared. The shadows snapped back to their rightful places, clinging once more to columns and thrones and trembling, immortal hands. Nothing had changed, and everything had changed. Evangeline stood in the exact same spot, hand still slightly raised, expression calm, almost pleasant. She had not moved a single inch. Her breathing was even, the agony of her broken ribs seemingly forgotten. She had just held the darkness of a universe in her hand, and it had cost her nothing. My dears, in all my long, long centuries, in all the tales of gods and monsters I have witnessed and recounted and embellished for your entertainment, I have never seen anything quite like this. It was not an act of war. It was a statement of fact, a redefinition of power. Utterly, terrifyingly, magnificently human. Valerian had sunk back into his throne. His face was gray. His mouth hung open, just slightly, the ancient composure shattered like cheap glass. The look in his eyes was not anger anymore. It was fear. A deep, marrow-deep, primal fear he had not felt since he was a mortal man with mortal blood in his veins. He had just been reminded that he was not the master of shadow. He was a borrower, and a landlord had come to collect. Ravenna's hands gripped the bone arms of her throne so tightly her obsidian nails were gouging furrows into the polished surface. Her clinical composure, the mask she wore like armor, the dispassionate scientist, was in ruins. Her violet eyes, wide and wild, were fixed on Evangeline with something new. Not curiosity, but awe. She had wanted to dissect a biological anomaly. She had just discovered that this specimen was capable of dissecting the universe. Commander Juggernaut was still on one knee, but he was no longer looking at Evangeline as a defeated opponent, or a curiosity, or a puppet. He was looking at her the way a zealot looks at a miracle. His god had always been strength and steel. He had just met a god who could turn off the sky. The Silent Four were no longer silent in their expressions. Kayalith of Ruin, Vesper of Aegis, Aurelius of Dominion, their centuries of jaded indifference had been burned away in 3 heartbeats, replaced by something raw and naked and dangerous. A mixture of fear and avarice in equal measure. They had come to see if the new power was worth acquiring. They had just learned it was a power that could acquire them. And Casimir, the ancient neutral arbiter, he sat on his stone throne, expression as unreadable as ever. But as Evangeline met his gaze across the silent hall, she saw it, a flicker, a ghost of a smile, not warmth, never warmth from Casimir, but a deep, profound, and terrifying satisfaction. This was what he had wanted. This was the result his perfect, legalistic trap had been designed to produce. He had not wanted to see if she was worthy. He had wanted the entire world to see it. He had not orchestrated a trial. He had orchestrated a coronation,